Hey everyone, my name is Lance, and this is Amped about Aimpad. I've been getting a lot of requests to make a video about Fortnite, and the reason for that is because there's been a resurgence in analog keyboards relating to something called double movement. They call it double movement because you would basically bind two movement keys to the same direction for a keyboard key, and they would tape keys down and all that type of stuff. This was a few months ago. And then Epic got rid of that ability to do that, and the only way to get this type of double movement was to use an Xbox controller. Now, because there are analog keyboards that mimic an Xbox controller, it's possible for you to have this double movement. But I think it's more than just being able to restore that double movement. It's the ability to control your character precisely the way you want, based off of how you push down analog keys. So I wanted to kind of highlight a couple of products that I've been involved with in the development of in relation to Cooler Master, and what it takes to basically get this double movement in Fortnite. So let's go ahead and jump into what's possible and what's entailed here. So this is the MK850, and it's a full keyboard that has analog keys that mimic that Xbox controller, and it gives you that competitive advantage that you were looking for if you're wanting to restore the double movement for Fortnite. Another product that is available is the Cooler Master ControlPad, and it's 24 keys for analog control as well. And both of these will allow you to do that, but there's some things that you need to do that to kind of set them up once, and then you shouldn't have to worry about it in the future. So I want to kind of review what the process is. If you were just buy this keyboard and plug it in, what do you need to do in order to get double movement? So the first thing that you want to do is after it's plugged in, you want to make sure that the Aimpad keyboard shows up as an Xbox controller. Now this is all hardware driven. There's no like additional software that you need to install or anything like that in order to get this function. What has to happen is when you plug it in, it should show up as an Xbox 360 controller automatically. Nothing additional you need to do, just plug it in. Should be painless. If for some reason it's not there and you don't have an Xbox controller listed when you open up the device manager, this button right here turns it on and turns it off. You really don't need to turn that on and off unless there's a very specific reason for it. And in most cases, it's not necessary. Just keep it on and leave it on and let it show up there. As long as that's working, the only additional thing you need to do from a hardware level is to calibrate the keyboard. Well, the reason for this is because Aimpad is very concerned about making sure that your analog experience is perfect across all of its keys. And this is done that we basically want to detect what is the value at the very top of the press and what is the value at the very bottom of the press, and then make sure that's properly scaled for 0 to 1 all the way through the whole key press. So I'll get into a little bit more why that's important. So I wanted to show you what this process looks like. So if you take the MK850 here, and I'm going to put it into a mode that has all the LEDs turned off. So if you hold down the FN key and then press minus and hold it there for a few seconds, what will happen is the keys will turn red here on the right side of the keyboard. Now these red keys correspond to the analog keys over here, and you're going to be calibrating them. So what I like to do is hold down the Q, W, E, and the R keys all at the same time. And as a tip, I would recommend doing that on the right edge of the keycap. And there's some mechanical reasons for that, but basically on the right edge of the Q, W, E, and R, and just hold those down. What will happen is the lights will turn green, and that corresponds to these keys that you've already been holding down that says, oh, those ones are calibrated. Perfect. And you do the same thing for A, S, D, and F, and hold those down, and they'll turn green. And when they do, you can release, and then the keyboard will go back to its normal function, and it is now active as an analog keyboard. That's all you have to do. There's a couple of tests that you can do before you launch Fortnite just to make sure that the analog keyboard is behaving exactly the way you want. And I'm going to open up our software here that basically tests the keyboard. So I'm going to verify that actually, before we do that, I'm going to jump into the Cooler Master software. So this basically, there's 5 different profiles that are built into the keyboard without you having to do anything. It's all mapped properly for you. So there's the M1 key that's just a keyboard, and then there's some FPS driving and advanced flight and mobile keys and things like that. But all you need to know for Fortnite is that if you're on the M1 profile, it's just a normal keyboard. There's no analog stuff going on. If I go to M2, this is the analog movement for first-person shooters like Fortnite, which is not technically a first-person, but anyways. the way that it works is WASD are mapped to the left analog stick, and if you move those keys around, that's it. So just make sure that you're on the M2 profile, and you'll be good. So okay, back to this test controller. So if I move these keys, you'll see I have analog movement based off of how I push down those keys, and there's a Fortnite game running in the background that you can see the character kind of moving around. But as long as you have movement in this for each of those 4 directions, then you're in good shape. The other really important thing is in the middle of the program here, you have these 1, 2, 3, and 4. This corresponds to the player number slot that the Xbox controller is assigned to. And Fortnite will only respond to the controller that's in slot number 1. So if I move it around and I get analog movement on that number 1, that means I am in good shape because it's detected properly. If for some reason it's in 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that, that means something has gone wrong, or you have another Xbox controller plugged in or something like that. So to kind of demonstrate that, I actually have the ControlPad plugged in as well. So I have 2 Xbox controllers plugged in, and if I move this around, it highlights the number 3, meaning this is actually detected as player number 3. And if I try to use this in Fortnite, it's not going to work. So if that does happen to you, the best thing to do is just make sure there's no other Xbox controllers plugged in, just your device that you want to use as player number 1, and reboot your computer. And in the majority of cases, that's going to fix the issue. As long as you're in player number 1, you'll be in good shape. And usually it'll stay in player number 1 consistently. If you have any issues, or you have issues that are going on with this or anything related to this, feel free to join our Discord channel, and I'll be happy to give you a hand on troubleshooting the issue, and I'll put a link in our comments, the description below. So let's jump into Fortnite real quick and kind of highlight what has to happen within the game for Fortnite. So there are 2 things that you want to validate or verify that are turned on or enabled. So one of those is this option here for ignore gamepad input. You want to make sure that's off so that it does have the analog gamepad detected. The other is lock input method as mouse is turned on, and that will just make sure that the user interface will always stay on the mouse inputs instead of the controller. So under the controller option here, the other setting is just make sure the left stick dead zone is 5%. It's the smallest to allow you. Analog keyboards don't need a dead zone, and there's lots of stuff you can look in previous videos if you want me to go over some more dead zone type stuff. But more or less, those 3 settings are the only thing you need to make sure that are enabled in the settings for Fortnite. But otherwise, now I have full analog movement. So based off of how I push down those keys, and hopefully you can kind of tell that from the camera above, based off of how I push these keys is how fast I will move in each direction. So typically on a normal keyboard mode, when I hold down W and I hold down D, this is the angle of movement that you're restricted to. There's no fine control. It's either straightforward, 45-degree angle, or to the right. That's all that's available to you. But if I go back to the analog movement for M2 profile, you can see I can go straight, and then I can push it more to the right and more to the right, and if I ease off the front, you'll get that angle that you were looking for building at specific angles. So if, let's say you are, I don't know, like you want to do the movement here and hold it down, basically, it allows you to have that same trajectory of movement, allowing you to build at the angle that you want. And that's the double movement people that we're trying to convey. If you do that with a keyboard and hold it down, it's a mess. It's not easy to do it. I'm not a great Fortnite player by any means, but I can appreciate what is possible using an analog keyboard. The other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight is, let's say for whatever reason you're going to use this for creative mode and you want to use it with an analog keyboard. So if I am using this for a keyboard, my movement is very abrupt and very annoying, where if I want to make like a slight turn and I'm using the keyboard, I have to like tap and then tap and then tap to get like that perfect angle. And this is not like intuitive to actually flying a plane. No one goes when they're controlling a plane or a steering wheel, they're not like jerking it around. That's not how we use these types of devices to control vehicles. And likewise, if you were to use the mouse, like, well, yeah, well, I can kind of get that feeling, but as soon as you like stop moving the mouse, the plane will reset its position. So I can't actually do the same thing with the mouse either. It's like a process of dragging and then dragging and then dragging and then dragging. And again, nobody flies any type of vehicle with a repeated motion like this. So if I switch back to analog movement, you can see I can hold that angle precisely, and it doesn't reset. It keeps going at that exact same angle based off of how I push the keys. And if I want more, I push it down. If I want to push it just a slight there and ease off, I can get exactly the type of analog movement that I would expect from a vehicle. And likewise, it's the same thing with any driving vehicle and things like that. It's more of an organic, more of a direct control over what you want to happen in the game, and then let it happen, because it's just the way that analog movement should be the standard for all types of devices for gaming. I think a keyboard has its uses, but if it doesn't have analog movement, it's missing a vital type of control that you have. And I think that's also relevant for people asking, well, is this ever going to get banned by Epic? Are they going to prevent this? I don't think so, because it still requires a certain amount of skill to be able to control at that certain angle, and to get the exact experience of what you're trying to do. And I think it's not going to be banned because it's an Xbox control. There's no software sitting in between or interrupting inputs or anything like that. It's going to be fine. So I hopefully that puts your mind at ease. Now, people are saying, well, how does this differ, or how is this different from like the other analog stuff out there that's from like Wooding and from Razer and things like that? So I've done a lot of data collection, and I take this very, very seriously. I think it's really important to highlight what the experience is like in using an analog keyboard, and I think it's adequately conveyed using a graph. And I like data, and you can look at previous videos if you want to see like how I've collected this data. But what we're basically doing here is we're measuring the analog value that comes out of the keyboard to the operating system. And 0 means that the key is not being pressed at all, and 1 means it's being pushed down all the way. That's the way it should work. Now, there's a couple of issues with the data that I've collected. So one is, this is coming from the Tartarus Pro from Razer, that basically as you push the key down a little bit, nothing happens, and then at around 0.4 millimeters, you'll start to get an analog value. And as you push the key down, it increases, and then it tops out, but you've only pushed the key down like 1.2 or 1.4 millimeters. So it's very, very small range of analog control that these keys have. The whole throw of the switch is 4 millimeters, so you're getting a very, very small segment of that key press for analog movement. And that's kind of counterintuitive to what you should expect to be happening. The other is the Wooding one that I've collected here. As you push the key down, nothing happens. Like, there's no response at all as you're pushing the key down. You push it down, nothing happens until you get to about 1.4 millimeters. Then you get some type of response. And there's tons of videos that I've made why this is not a practical, useful experience for users. But as you push it down, it will then have its analog range after you've pressed that movement down. In contrast to that, you have the Cooler Master ControlPad data here, that as you push it down, you immediately get a response. And as you push it down more, you get a change all the way through the entire key press to the very end. So that's a stark contrast, where it is truly an analog key that as you push it down, no matter where you're at in that press, you get a unique analog value. I think that's really, really critical and really important for analog control. The other thing is that you can buy these products now. Like, I'll put links in Amazon. You can buy them right now. They're not out of stock or whatever. That you can buy them right now, and they're also inexpensive. The MK850 is $159, which is relatively expensive, and the ControlPad is only $89 right now. So very stark contrast to like the new Razer keyboard that came out that's like $249. The control, you can buy like 3 control pads for that. Anyways, if you think that this might be something you'd be interested in, go ahead and give it a look, and I think you'd be pleasantly surprised with what's possible with using analog keyboards and analog control pad in Fortnite. If you like this video and want to see more of this content, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching.